Hey everybody, this is Dr. William Clark here, your host of the Dr. William Clark podcast. Glad to be with you for another episode. And this is the podcast that talks about all things nonprofits. We do focus on leadership strategy and fundraising. I wanted to talk a little bit about fundraising today. And for those of you who are in this process of looking to launch your nonprofit, to get it off the ground, and to really position it to receive resources, this is the podcast for you. If at any time during this podcast you would like to get a hold of me and my team, I'm going to encourage you to visit us at DrWilliamPClark.com. Again, that's DrWilliamPClark.com. There you can access our calendar. You can join any of our courses, projects. You can submit projects for us to work on and all that good stuff. Again, DrWilliamPClark.com. Now, we tend to talk about fundraising based upon the three key strategies that we have found to work for us, for our clients, etc. And those strategies include you got to have an organizational strategy. And we also believe in having a programmatic strategy. So it's not enough to just have a big picture view of what you want to accomplish at the organizational level, but it is important for you to have a thoughtful process and approach to how you're going to solve problems and strategically move your program forward to address the specific issues within the community you're serving. So when you have that strategy in place, what you're communicating to funders is that you are thinking about solutions that are beyond the status quo. You are aware of the status quo, what has worked, but you're more interested in solutions that are going to be unique to your customer, unique to the community that you're servicing, and focused on addressing the voices that are rising to the top here. And the voices in your community that are calling out for services may not do it so vocally, right? So you can listen to the most vocal persons and groups in your community or target community that you're serving. And when we're talking about target community, we're not talking about just geography, but we're talking about a group of people that co-identify under an umbrella. So the loudest are not the folks that may be articulating the clearest message about the need of the community. Rather, when you look at data, when you look at people group movements and behaviors and trends, that's the loudest voice you should be listening to, because those data points, that collage of information that you're gathering from everybody that's moving in a particular way, that's producing a trend that is noticeable. It is those folks and that data that they are communicating non-verbally in some cases that you need to strategize around. Now, essentially, when you look at this data and you look at how the trends are kind of pointing in one direction, that needs to be converted over into language and information that shows up in a grant application, in an RFQ, LOI, or some other marketing or sales product that you and your nonprofit will be producing. And so some of you may not even think about your grants and the RFQs, RFPs, LOIs as marketing and sales material, because we don't use that language at all in the nonprofit world. But essentially, there are funders and foundations, stakeholders with resources and contracts who are looking for partners like you to work with to solve that same problem that you've noticed. And so they communicate their desire to partner and to release resources through the form of a grant, through the form of a RFQ, request for qualifications, or RFP, request for proposals, or LOI, letter of intent. And it's essentially, this is what marketing and sales looks like in our world, right? So you're going to have to translate that information that you're noticing, the trends that you're noticing, to your funders, partners, stakeholders, etc. So you got to have a strategy in place organizationally and programmatically. Secondly, you got to have performance results that you're tracking. So performance results can be really tricky, particularly if you're new as an organization, or if your organization is mature but it's new to a particular industry, a book of business, it's new to a community, it's new to a target audience, etc. There are ways to kind of navigate this, But I think the bigger point for you to take away from this is that you got to do the work. Now, you can do some comparative work and compare yourself to other organizations who may have been doing this work for quite some time. I'm going to encourage you not to think about that and to really refrain from any comparisons as much as you can, because you're just not going to compete. It's not going to compute. You're going to lose in many cases. And so, if that's a losing proposition, why do it in the first place? So, when you start to look at performance, you want to look at performance based upon the vision you're setting forward for your program. So, this goes back to the first point we made. What's the strategy? And what's the strategy in response to? So if you're looking to serve youth, you're looking to serve folks who are justice involved, you're looking to serve people who have high barriers, there are the status quo best practices that exist, and you can certainly research those and you can find those out, and they work. But you may notice that they might not work with the target audience that you are now serving. And many legacy organizations that have been around for a while, that have been doing this work for quite some time, may not notice the new trends in their own marketplace because of a new customer, a new demographic that's emerging. But you, as a new leader, emerging leader, a new nonprofit that's rising from the bottom, you may notice this new customer and no one's paying attention. So when you start to look at performance, you don't want to get caught up in comparing yourself to others because they're serving a larger demographic, a demographic that's well funded, well known, etc. You want to start to get results, even if you don't have money behind it. So you may not have a grant, you may not have resources behind it, but you want to start collecting data. And I encourage new organizations, new leaders to go beyond the onesies and the twosies. We often hear about the anecdotal stories of who you've helped, and that's great, but that's not going to move the needle to generate support, generate traction, to get you in a position to get the notoriety you need to really serve at a greater scale. So get beyond the onesies and the twosies and create a program, create a system that starts to serve the masses. You want to target your audience, but you want to serve more than one person. You want to serve more than 5 individuals. You want to serve more than 10 families. Try to look at that 30 to 50 range, particularly within a calendar year. If you can get to 70, 75, you might be in an interesting space because it's a lot of work. And you want to make sure you have a healthy sample size in a 12-month cycle that says we've followed this program, followed this outline, we've done this thing, and so we believe that we've gotten these results because of this process, this thing we've done, and we think we can replicate it again with another 75 folks. But in order to do that, we need resources. So when you start to request resources, the funders are going to be asking for results. What have you done? Who did you serve? When? How many? Etc. So you're going to want to start to capture that information. So we talked about strategy, talked about performance. I'm going to pause here and encourage you to visit me at DrWilliamPClark.com. Visit my website, schedule a consultation, join one of my workshops that we have on the website, particularly workshops around fundraising basics. You want to join that workshop because we cover a lot of this in detail. And while the title talks about fundraising, at the core of what we teach you how to build a really strong and solid program that serves the needs of the community and generates support from funders. So go to DrWilliamPClark.com and go ahead and check out our resources there. So the last thing you want to think about is starting to build relationships of value. You want to start to build those strong connections between yourself and other people. I'm going to encourage you, particularly if you're new, start to build relationships with frenemies. And frenemies are other organizations that are doing similar things. You may consider them a competitor. Let me just tell you, they are not. They're not your competitor, because if they've been doing this for quite some time and they're serving the same demographic and they've been around for a while, they're not your competitor. So you want to start to learn from those who've been in the business for a while. And if you do have true competitors, meaning that you and this other organization, you guys are on equal footing, equal playing fields, and you are competing to serve the same clientele and getting similar results, you want to start to figure out how can you start to bring those folks closer. It won't always work, but I do want to push you beyond your limitations of thinking about relationships that don't work. Begin to think about the ones that do. So think about others who are serving similar audiences like you. Think about funders, partners, cities and state officials who are serving the clientele that you're serving, who have an interest and a focus on what you're doing. And this begins to put you in a position to think about how to develop the most effective relationships that can generate meaningful, significant results for your organization, right? As the entity that's providing a service, but also for your customer. These are the people who are coming to you asking for help, who are saying with their actions and their verbals and other nonverbals that we need you. And so when you put this together, strategy, performance, relationships, it's a recipe that puts you in a position to really command the attention of stakeholders who are looking for fresh new faces, fresh new strategies and approaches and solutions to age-old problems and new problems that are emerging in and around us. So when you think about fundraising, this is key. And I'm going to encourage you to replay this, re-listen to this podcast so that you can start to process through these strategies and begin to put them into action for your organization. Now, if you need help thinking through this, if you need help walking through these approaches and really figuring out how to adopt them within your organization, whether it's through fundraising, grant writing, or some other mechanism, I'm going to encourage you to visit me at DrWilliamPClark.com. Again, that's DrWilliamPClark.com. Visit me there, schedule your consultation, take a class, download a book, whatever we have. Take full advantage of it because we've produced these products specifically for you so that you can have all the resources you need to be the most effective nonprofit leader that you can be for the folks that are depending upon you the most. This is the Dr. William Clark podcast. We'll see you guys next time. See everybody.